Finally, for our remaining study, this is an example of me actually winning a game for once in my life. This was from a Trompowsky opening where I have, with the white pieces, traded off my dark squared bishop for this knight. And as we have discussed throughout this chapter, when you talk about same-side attacks or you talk about just attacking a castled king, you've got to utilize your pawns and you've got to utilize your pieces while observing where specifically the attack lies. So here, that's probably going to be our target. Somewhere along the H-file, H6, G6, somewhere here we're going to be able to strike. Now, could I castle short here? Absolutely. Absolutely can castle short. However, once I castle short, I need to move my knight out of the way, and then I need to get my queen over here, and maybe we have some sort of attack. What does my opponent want? My opponent wants to chop at the center, maybe advance some pawns over here to create some problems. So I have a decision to make. Do I try to fire my pawns while castling this way? Do I leave my king put? Do I commit my king? I decided to play the move h4. h4 is setting up something called a Greek gift sacrifice, which in chess is the idea of giving up your bishop on h7, on the h7 square against the king, not when there's a knight there. The king takes, and now here comes the knight. So that is sort of the idea of the Greek gift. It's a very historical and famous tactic. And just generally speaking, the point of the Greek gift is to bring in the queen as the haymaker. But there's a bonus here. See this? That's the benefit of not having castled yet. And if this were to happen, the queen and the rook would simply devastate the black king, who, despite having more material in his party, is not under the right level of defense for the position. So that doesn't work, right? So that doesn't work. Bishop takes h7 is not going to be a good situation for black to be in. So that's why I played h4. My opponent has a couple of options of dealing with this, but plays the move h6. The move h6 completely removes the possibility of the Greek gift. Now, I can still maybe actually try it, but in this case, this stays closed because... right? Like, there's no there's no need. It's not checkers. You don't actually have to take anything. And if I create a mating threat, there's just g6. Now, I mean, to be honest, it still looks a little bit dicey. Okay, I gotta tell you, it looks a little dangerous. But it's probably completely fine for black. So, instead of that, we now turn our attention to this. And this is kind of an example of, again, pawn play. Again, attacking a castled king while either being in the center or long. It's sort of the same thing. That h6 pawn is now something we call a hook. So when my pawns arrive into the black position, like for instance on that square, under normal circumstances the pawn would have been back, so black's pawn wouldn't have to make a decision. But if I get to g5, a trade will happen. I am guaranteed an exchange of something there, and then I will utilize that to open up the file. My opponent sees this coming and panics, and basically is like, oh my god, like I don't know what to do. So they try to move out of the way. That does not stop what I want. I want g5. I am not concerned if you play h5. I am only concerned if I don't act right now and black is able to build a fortress. That is bad. When your opponent locks a position too much, especially when you are trying to attack, you're going to run out of options. For instance, you might have e4. But now you're relying on a bit too much. Now you are opening the center. Look at this. This is a really bad example of opening the center. Suddenly, it's the white position that completely collapses. You still don't have an attack. And what did you do? You just opened up the queen. You invited black's most powerful piece to the party. You're about to invite black's most powerful backup pieces to the party. And the bishop sees the entire board. So a move ago, none of that existed. Look at this position. Black had none of that. Black had none of that. So you need to be very careful how exactly you open up the position. I was ready for black to play exactly what I'm showing you here on the screen, and I was going to play a move like g6, leaving black with a very unpleasant decision. Capture my pawn and allow me to basically have open season. I go here, my queen gets in, or try to blockade the position with something like f5, but that pawn is still isolated. I'm still going here, I'm still getting there. And make no mistake, when my queen arrives on that h5 square, I am going to deliver checkmate on the very next move, or in 2 moves. So I knew that I had to be fast enough to disconnect my opponent's pieces from locking up. My opponent saw that too and decided to lock things like this. So what did I do? Not complicated. Opened up the position. My opponent decided my bishop was worth removing from the game. So my bishop now will not participate in this attack, but black has overcommitted, creating a weakness and creating weak squares. Not that one. So this. Now what do? Do we give a check just because we can? Not necessarily. Only give this check if you're absolutely ready. I decided now was the time to castle. Was rook g1 possible? Probably. Could I have also played knight to e5? Potentially. But now my king is safe and I have another rook ready to join the attack. What does my opponent do here, seeing this arriving, my queen arriving? My opponent tries to run the king, which is actually a pretty sensible decision. I have to say. It made me kind of regret maybe not being a little bit faster, but then I realized, wait a minute, I still have knight e5 check. In this particular case, trading the knights makes really no difference to my position because my queen is going to arrive on that h5 square. And I have backup in the form of being able to stop the escape of the king. This is really important. This is really important. For instance, in the game, my opponent did this. Had they kept running, I would have immediately met them right there. And that would have been the end of the escape. Because nothing can block and you have to come back. But let's just say hypothetically, for some reason, this was the position. Then actually this escape would be pretty good. Like, I don't have this anymore. What I would do now playing with white is I would utilize the king's weakness to try to win some material. Like I might pick up a pawn. Because being up a pawn is still better than nothing. Up a pawn, very weak king, continue to try to attack these weaknesses. Maybe at this point I do open up the center. Because the king is over there now. Right? But in the way the game is unfolding, I don't need to stop my attack just to win a pawn and try to win an endgame. I'm hunting the king. So I bring out my queen to give a check. I pick up the pawn with check. I bring the queen back to give a check again. And now I play rook g1. So I've taken a pawn on h6 with a check, and to prevent that escape, I disconnect these two pieces. And now very simple. I can bring my knight. I can also bring my rook. No rush. Very important moment here. If queen e8, you do not trade the queens for the love of God. If I have taught you anything thus far in this chapter, do not trade the queens. Queen h6 check is game over. King f7, queen h7 check. Black has nothing. It's made on the next move. Do not trade the queens, please. So we have rook takes g1, and the game will end in a mate. I think in the actual game, I played rook g1, and my grandmaster opponent actually just straight up resigned the game, realizing that the attack was too devastating. This all started because I tried to utilize the Greek gift idea by playing h4, setting up the sacrifice with the rook opposite the pawn, a very common idea known as the Greek gift sacrifice. And the second I saw that there was a hook, a pawn target, I launched my third and final pawn. This was a very nice example of how within the first 10 moves of a chess game, you can launch devastating attacks on opponents if they are caught off guard and if they are not taking good care of their king. This was a GM that I played, a grandmaster, the highest title that you can achieve in chess, and I made it look easy. Absolutely obliterated, took their soul in a game like this, all because they committed their king a little bit too early, and I had a very nice space advantage and a closed center, and I used that to cultivate such a powerful attack. If I can do it, you can do it too.